Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Wood, and on behalf of Caresoft Technology, I would like to welcome you to our webinar, Modernizing the Mission, Architecting Secure Real-Time Data Pipelines for Salesforce. With that, I'd like to pass it off to today's speakers to introduce themselves and kick us off. Um, sorry, with the little agenda first, but passing it off to Brian.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Pierre. I am Coastal's Market Strategy Director over public sector. So I am pretty much coming far from the city of New York, where I've had my public sector experience there, working with multiple agencies in a city that spends, as you can imagine, a lot of money, somewhere to the tune of about $25 billion worth of goods and services. Most of those goods and services being in technology and in IT. And so, having been part of those critical procurements and contracts, as well as a lot of the technological upgrades and implementations all throughout the city, certainly has been a vital part of my career. And I've taken that now to pretty much the consulting side of the public sector, where it's just consulting to and providing those services to the public sector, as much of yourselves are here on this call. It rounds up to about 15 years of experience there, and so it's all pretty much just public sector focused and based. And so I hope to be able to harken on that experience on behalf of everyone here on this call today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brian. I'll introduce myself. My name is Josh Straley. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at FormAssembly. We'll dig into FormAssembly's platform a little bit later. My career has me coming into software as a service, or SaaS, working with general contractors in the roofing industry, believe it or not. One of the things that I've done during my career is concentrate on how SaaS helps an organization interface and provide services to their stakeholders, or in the roofing trade, a roofing customer. Here at FormAssembly, though, we look at kind of the path in a reverse. A lot of our organizations use FormAssembly to collect data and bring information from stakeholders and audiences. And recently, with some federal certifications, FedRAMP and DoD IL4 specifically, we are bringing that capability to the public sector space. And we're really excited to talk about helping public sector organizations today.
All right. Thank you, Josh. Um, we're going to be discussing public sector data collection in this webinar. Can you start by explaining what data collection is, and can you give us some examples?
Yeah, I'll kick this off. I guess I brought up data collection. So data collection, is simple in some respects, right? It's anytime your organization, agency, or even if it's one-to-one, is intaking information from another party. That is, it takes on very specific forms depending on the industry that you're in. For the public sector, this could look as complex as grant applications. It could look like onboarding of warfighters, and in some ways, it also looks very similar to data collection in other industries. We have customers in the educational space, but at the federal level. So they need to onboard students. They have student applications that look very similar to anything you'd see in the private sector or at public universities. But the big difference, especially for public sector, is the security and compliance standards that these organizations have to operate under. And there's strict scrutiny around software in particular. That's where certifications like FedRAMP and like DoD IL4 come in. So really, the data collection can look similar with very specific use cases, but in public sector, it gets more challenging because of the compliance standards that public sector organizations have to uphold. Brian, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just to follow up on what you're saying there, Josh, so just add a little context to that in the sense that even though it is very simple, as you mentioned, it has significantly transformed data collection over the course of time in general. I mean, it used to be those old school surveys and the focus groups and the public community forums, much like the census, like we have every 10 years. But now nowadays it's all tech based, and so it's all cross agency open source data covering from things like weather forecasts, GPS logistics, all the way out to public safety statistics. So rightfully, the way things should be is for more inclusion and does allow that now. Now that it's the way that it is now. So and it's coming from, of course, from different sources. So it's making sure that it's modernized, all throughout its collection history. So it's agentic AI, it's smart city IoT infrastructure that's pretty much capturing all of those data points without having to ask, and it's all bringing it to relevancy, essentially.
Thank you for sharing your point of view there. Now that we understand the concept, what challenges do organizations run into with data collection? What are some public sector specific challenges?
Sure, I can take that one. I think it's a challenge of data management both on the front and the back end. So to start off on the front end, we're talking about public sector organizations that struggle to keep up with, the all of the technological advancements. It's the AI, whether it's generic or generative and agentic AI. It's the cloud environments, and of course, just having different siloed systems. It's multiple systems with the same data sources, and it becomes very very tedious to manage and keep up with, depending on whatever side you're on, whether you're a constituent or you're actually in the background working. What of course essentially what affects the front door is now affecting the back door, and that back door is showing that data is not being transferred to one single source of truth, and decision making outcomes, they all become delayed, or they become hampered in some sort of way. It can even go as far as taxpayer funds being unused or even wasted. I saw even a recent study done by Level Blue, which shows that nearly half of all agencies in the US lack full visibility into their systems and the partners that they use. And so it's pretty much legacy issues creating legacy issues. And that's really the core issue here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Brian. And I love how you put that legacy, causing legacy issues. We have this expectation when dealing with government digital experiences. You expect their websites to be like the BMV, and it doesn't have to be that way. But a lot of our public sector kind of like data professionals, the people in charge of producing digital services, building data pipelines, using all of these, admittedly the same tools that the private sector has, but again, operating in different environments, more secure, more compliant, they get held back by the limitations that, there's just not enough tools. Sometimes, the private sector has access to tools that the public sector just hasn't approved yet, that can't meet the standards that, are required. Because, FormAssembly, I'm not on our security and compliance team, but I have watched our security team, hop through the hurdles and the hoops that it takes to become FedRAMP authorized. We actually ended up partnering with a well-known provider in the space called FedHive in order to offer FormAssembly in a certified environment, because it's very difficult to, all the self-attestations, all the audits, et cetera. It can eat up a small team's time. So, those professionals inside of these public PubSec orgs, they think that they only have access to certain tools. And those are the tried and true tools that have been offering, admittedly, not great digital experiences for decades. They're like, hey, this is what we have to work with. It can be tough to keep up with things, but there are new tools available that can help the public sector provide essentially modern experiences. And I think as we start to see newer generations that have grown up with cell phones, that have grown up with these incredibly personalized, streamlined, and very modern digital experiences, I think the public sector is going to feel that pressure because, taxpayers are going to be like, why does this website look like it is from 1999 when my tax money should be going and funding better sites? And I don't mean to throw any shade on any public websites. I've actually seen the federal government put out a lot better front end development lately, but I know from our customers and just from the challenges that they report that the back end is a little messy. There's still some manual processes, and that's what we try to help with here at FormAssembly.
Awesome. Well, speaking of modernizing digital services, let's talk about AI. Many organizations that are moving forward with AI implementations are finding that their data quality is a critical component to the success of agents and AI-powered tools. When you look at tools like Salesforce Data Cloud, what best practices are necessary to get the most out of those tools?
Yeah, let me tackle this one first because we've been looking at this issue for several months now. The first thing we heard about AI was it's going to unlock efficiencies, it's going to automate so much, it's going to be a silver bullet for all of the slow-moving processes at any organization, not just the public sector. And then as we started to implement AI tools, we started to notice that we were getting a little bogged down rather than unlocking efficiencies, right? We surveyed some decision makers at organizations that had decision-making control over AI implementation specifically. We conducted this survey the back half of 2025, so about 6 months ago, and admittedly, an AI time frame, that is an eternity, but I think their answers still hold true. Two quick stats from that survey that I want to share today. On average, our surveyed audience said that 43% of their team's time was spent preparing or cleaning data before they could use it in AI or analytics workflows, things like Data Cloud. And then here's what's really wild. We asked them, how much time they were spending, not just a percentage, but how much time they were spending on cleaning or preparing data for AI versus how much they spent inside of an AI tool analyzing that data. 80% of that audience said they spent somewhere between 1 and 5 hours preparing data for every 1 hour they spent inside of an AI tool analyzing or essentially getting the benefits of that analysis, that AI powered analysis. So, I do expect that number to get better. It's probably better in May than it was in December, but I do know from organizations and from just some of my colleagues that we are still spending a lot of time making sure that AI data or data we're going to feed into an AI implementation is complete, correct. Because if we don't, that's when you start seeing conflicts. That's when you start seeing data that is incorrect. I mean, for a variety of reasons. And all of that undermines the trust that an organization needs to place in its data for that unlocking of value to really take place. So, ironically, AI has brought this attention back to the input data where it's like, hey, if you have garbage data coming into your system, you are going to get garbage analysis and garbage performance out, whether that be a chat experience, for your customers, whether that be an analysis in a platform like Data Cloud. We use the not very catchy term, garbage in, garbage out. It's definitely there. And that's where I'm seeing kind of like the biggest challenge is just organizations coming back to the front end, placing those controls and making sure that the data that feeds into their system is ready to be used in AI powered tools.
Yeah, that's awesome, Josh. I definitely interesting to hear those numbers, those statistics you brought up, and the two words that come to mind when you answer that question is data hygiene or even data harmony. Salesforce, I like to think of Salesforce Data Cloud essentially as like the plug between all the different systems a government agency uses. So it's not just that data storage; it's like a unified data harmonizer. It ensures that your agentic AI, your frontline caseworkers, and of course your citizens, all of your citizen self-service portals are all operating from one single source of clean data, not garbage data. So it's all, just having that seamless data integration tools like a Snowflake that are in the background helping with tremendously, taking on all of that data that caseworker, that citizen self-service portal, and all those other systems and unifying it into one profile, one single 360 data model, which is really what Salesforce's data cloud is really all about. It just kind of standardizes it all across the board and into one system. So that's we're pretty much seeing those kind of live examples literally like right now in the state of Montana and even in like different departments of transportation all across the country where they're monitoring all of this data and having it housed in one place where they're able to see and assess things like road traffic and the rate of accidents here or there. They're taking all that live data and pretty much utilizing the data cloud and database technology to collect, refine, and manage it. And so, one of the great things that A Coastal does is we offer ways for agentic operations, which is a pretty much a specialized service framework that provides a continuous expertise and established operational strategy around your organization to effectively manage and expand your AI agent ecosystem. And so you pair that with the Salesforce Data Cloud and how data needs to continuously come in and be cleaned in order to truly embrace those benefits of a Salesforce Data Cloud. That's where a Coastal and of course a FormAssembly can come in to make that happen.
Right. Thank you for your insights on AI. Moving a little bit into protecting data, how do you balance the need for strict authentication and protecting sensitive citizen data with the need for a frictionless, user-friendly digital experience?
Yeah, I can start off with this one. I think sales. That's the thing about Salesforce is that it, as a system, it can already allow for organizations to effectively partition their data and keeping private information private, while allowing for certain users to see certain amounts or certain levels of data in certain places. So it allows a level of authorization automatically. One user from one organization might only see information that's relevant to that organization as opposed to another user where they're seeing every sensitive piece of information, not to mention, the access that they have from Salesforce is, taking in a modernized, government compliant kind of single sign on and pass key policy that pretty much all updates, and it transforms with an upgrading standard and practice in the industry. So you're getting essentially the latest and greatest through Salesforce, and it just continues to automatically update for you and for all of your constituents, and of course your internal users in your agency. Coastal in general, where we provide not just that Salesforce data management service, but we also provide a specialized service or strategic offering that is designed pretty much to synchronize with your organization's objectives, your personnel, your workflows, and just pretty much the technology that you have, and transforming it into a focused, executionable roadmap. We call it our True North strategic service. And so that's pretty much built into coming into a consulting agency as ours, where we provide to the public sector the pretty much the investment yields and that tangible outcomes that follow through with keeping sensitive data sensitive, essentially. Josh.
Nice. I love that. Similarly, we talk about authentication of form assembly a fair amount because as your question kind of stated, there is a balance that you need to strike between the who we call the respondent, the person at the other end of a digital experience, right? That could be a taxpayer, could be a warfighter, could just be an employee, could be a survey taker, right? A lot of government projects have people going out and, like the census, collecting that kind of information, demographic surveys, et cetera. Balancing their experience with the form, with the digital property, and the need to authenticate, not just to keep sensitive data sensitive, like Brian said, but also to provide a better experience for the person at the other end. If I already know you, if you're an employee or perhaps a grant application that has come through, or someone who has applied before, I don't need you to fill in every bit of information, especially if I have that information inside of Salesforce, right? So one of the primary use cases that we see that kind of strikes this balance is FormAssembly allows our customers to use any of the identity provider softwares that they already have in place. I think Brian kind of referred to this too. Whatever tool you're using, be that CAS, LDAP, SAML authentication services, or be that Salesforce's experience sign-on. We allow them to use that to authenticate at the form level. So before someone sees a form, we can ask them to sign in using the identity provider that's already at the organization, and then we can use that information, the authentication, to pull information out of Salesforce and put that into the form to speed up the respondent's experience, provide them known data, offer them an opportunity to update that data. Perhaps they've moved, perhaps they have new contact information, but that respondent knows that they can trust that form as well. If I wander into a form and it knows everything about me, and I didn't have to provide any information, or perhaps I just provided an email address, that doesn't feel very trustworthy, right? That feels like walking into a store and they already had my credit card on file. How did they get that, right? So, like, we offer those kind of tools specifically around authentication to speed up the process, make that delightful respondent experience possible while also maintaining security, compliance, and trust at the respondent level. And to go back to something I said earlier, a lot of these like builds that were, trustworthy, a lot of working around single sign-on tools can be a little tough. It can require your security team to build that data pipeline. I think what's really cool with FormAssembly is we make authentication super simple. You can set up an authentication step, reference your IDP, and then have suddenly a form that you built in minutes be an authenticated experience where you can provide, like that data experience. So making sure that the public sector knows that there are modern tools available that can make their jobs easier, I think that is how we kind of strike that balance as well.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I wanted to quickly launch our first poll of the day. So if you could just take a minute to answer that. But I understand that we'll be having a demonstration today of how FormAssembly can address some of the challenges we've discussed. Can you tell us what we're about to see?
Yes, absolutely. So to set this up, and I've got this recorded. You don't want a marketing guy doing your full demos, but I have a real-time demonstration I'm going to show the audience today. You're going to see exactly how any organization, private sector or public sector, because FormAssembly is offered in FedRAMP High and DoD IL4 environments, how they can use FormAssembly to streamline these kind of constituent-facing services that we've discussed, be that something sophisticated like a grant application or something as simple as a contact this government service form, all inside of secure, compliant environments, but simply, right? Without custom development, without slowing down. I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this. So this is the FormAssembly platform. Over here on the right, we've spoken about AI and kind of like AI-driven data analysis today. This is FormAssembly's AI agent, or FAE, as we call them. And FAE takes natural language prompts, as you can see here. This is like, hey, I want to build this workflow. I've got 5 steps. I want to take in data, and I want to provide a thank you page, and I want that data to pull from Salesforce. So without even needing to use drag and drop tools, which we also offer, you're able to have the system build a form and a workflow. And by that, I mean all of the follow-up steps, follow-up forms off of initial form. That's what we call a workflow, all from a single prompt. Like when we talked about legacy tools begetting kind of legacy services, there's also this idea that, hey, there's a lot of manual work involved in just building the census form, right? Not any longer. Now you can go from requirement list, a list of the questions that you want, or even more abstract than that. Hey, I need to get information for a grant application. You can provide that information, and FormAssembly's AI agent knows the type of form to build. So here we can see that it's built a lookup form, something that is going to use an email address. And I should note, FormAssembly has what we call human-centered AI. So the AI doesn't just build. The AI stops itself and asks the user, hey, here's what I've done. Take a look at it. When you're ready, approve this, and I'm on to the next step. So this keeps us from having that, not to throw any shade at ChatGPT, but those experiences where it's like, oh, okay, you've gone much further than I need you to go. Our AI agent makes sure that the user feels in control and is ready to move on. So it prompts you to save. It never saves without your permission. And then it asks you to affirm things before it moves on. So here it's built a second form that's going to actually house some patient data. So I'm using a patient intake use case here. So we're going to pull in some PHI that we already have stored inside of Salesforce after authenticating this user. So we're going to go ahead and move this into a workflow. So now you've seen FormAssembly's form builder. add all the fields you'd like. Obviously, our AI agent did that for you. And here's a workflow builder. So this allows you to see in a visual format how the data collection process is actually going to go step by step. So as this pulls in our forms and builds our connectors for us, we'll see this render here. And again, this is real time. I'll feel the need to fill air, but anyone who has gone through a manual form build will know that we have gone from 0 to 60 in approximately 90 seconds. So it goes pretty fast. So here we see we have our initial form. We saw that lookup form, and I'm going to make sure that we kind of see the respondent experiences before we leave today as well. You can see we have connector steps. So we make it possible for you to, again, using information at the form level, bring that to Salesforce and say, hey, I want to look up a record, right? And it's this easy. Here's what I want to pull into the next form, all of this information. And then if that information is updated, I also want to update the contact record. So we have the ability to create, look up, and update records here inside of FormAssembly. Capabilities that are normally something that you'd have to use an OmniScript or a web to lead form for. It's native-like, but obviously we are a separate platform from Salesforce. So I want to just quickly move through and show you what the respondent sees. So again, this is a patient intake experience, right? So for the public sector, perhaps we're part of HHS, and we actually have field services where we're offering healthcare. So this is where we would ask a patient to visit our website, and then we'd ask them to go ahead and provide their information. Oh, forgive me, I'm looking at the wrong video. Let me go ahead and reshare that for you. And this is why the marketing guy doesn't get to do live demos, right? So here we have the full workflow that we just saw in the configuration step. So let's take a look at what the patient experience is going to look like. So here's a nice clean lookup form. Again, a form is a form is a form, right? In this case, we're not necessarily just intaking data. We're actually asking you to look yourself up. Then we seamlessly push you to this form that has been pre-filled with your information. As I mentioned earlier, you want this to be a trusted experience. So I would, of course, authenticate this user with more than an email address. I'd use an authentication provider to provide this. But let's say this patient does, as I mentioned earlier, need to update their contact information. Maybe it's just their phone number. We went ahead and updated that phone number. Now we're going to jump over to the Salesforce record, and we're going to see previously that 999 number. And then immediately at this level, we can see that that mobile number has updated as well. So, again, this is not just about providing a really clean patient experience or a respondent experience. This is more about solving both that external experience problem. Hey, how do we offer modern, streamlined experiences, but also keep a central source of truth? Brian mentioned, Data Cloud becomes this easily visible source of truth inside of the Salesforce ecosystem. You got to get that data into Salesforce for that to work. And the best data is obviously clean and complete and validated, but also it's real time, right? It's not out of date. It doesn't take 12 hours to sync. It's something that's right there and ready. I know I flew through that demo and also broke it into two sections poorly. So I would love, Michael, I think we have a third poll on our list. If anybody would like a personalized demo, I do want to make it super simple for you to reach out for that. If you'd like to see FormAssembly in a personalized fashion, you can go ahead and click yes on this before we get to the Q&A, and we can get you that personalized demo after today's session.
All right. Thank you, Stuart. That demo was great. We're now going to move into the Q&A portion of our webinar. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A pod down below. We'll do our best to answer them live. We'll give you a minute or two to enter your questions and complete that poll. All right, it looks like we have a question here. We are looking into Data Cloud, but our current data is dirty. Has Coastal seen any success in helping organizations clean up their data for use in DC?
Yeah, actually, Coastal's seen a lot of success in diversifying both the data architecture and just kind of like the data and that data harmony that I mentioned. We've seen that through pretty much a bevy of clients, whether it be just off the top of my head, thinking about the Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs, whether it be the University of Kentucky or it's the Oklahoma Tobacco Settlement Endowment Trust. We're just seeing patterns pretty much across examples like constituent engagement, that 360 degree, data 360 profile, updater that I mentioned, and all those things that just kind of brings that personalized insight both to the organizations and to the demographics that are being affected by it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. It looks like we have another question here. How much developer heavy lifting is required to set up these integrations? Or is this primarily a low code or no code configuration?
Yes, spot on. Assuming we're talking about the integrations we just saw, you actually saw the configuration setup. FormAssembly makes it super simple for anyone, including myself, who shows that he doesn't know how to use technology very well, to set up solid, reliable, and deep integrations. If you have tried to build something bi-directional yourself in other platforms, you know that it can be tough to figure out, your URL pre-filling, right? You're trying to build like weird UTM parameters. We make it super simple to pre-fill and then again to update records. We didn't look at it today, but you can apply conditional logic to those integration steps as well, and send sensitive data to a different system if you don't want to store it inside of Salesforce. I know some organizations would rather keep PHI in a separate system, in EHR, for instance. We do make it easier. We can get more technical, but that doesn't mean you need a developer. It is very simple, and of course, as you saw, we have AI agents to help you move faster through that kind of stuff. That being said, I do know a lot of customers have a lot of success with organizations like Coastal. Being able to have a trusted builder to get super technical is always helpful.
Thank you, Josh. It looks like we have one more here. If we are already using Salesforce's native Experience Cloud for some forms,
Mm.
why would we add Form Assembly as an additional secure layer?
Yeah, and Brian kind of touched on this. Salesforce does offer some best-in-class authentication options, and some, like we do, as I mentioned, allow our users to use Salesforce Experience pages to auth and then embed forms on Salesforce Experience pages. We totally understand that. Hey, you trust Salesforce. You already have all of your users in there, some of your stakeholders. Really, where I see the opportunity to move, to use other services, maybe in addition to Experience Cloud pages, is when you're doing really high volume use cases of data collection. If you are, surveying again an audience where you don't know every constituent in that audience, perhaps it's a health survey, perhaps it's a nationwide survey. You're not going to have an experience license for every one of those respondents. And so in those cases, Salesforce authentication might not work, but you still want to authenticate in some form or fashion. Maybe you do have, a list that you can include in a SAML environment. So it's kind of a cost saving measure to move that authentication off of Salesforce, candidly. Those high volume use cases are where I would definitely not want everyone to have an Experience Cloud license. But also, like if you're not collecting information from your Salesforce users, it can be less of a reason to use a Salesforce authentication method there.
All right. It looks like that's all the questions we received today. But I want to thank you for answering and giving the demo and having our discussion.
Absolutely.
Of course, and I'll pass it to Brian to go over some coastal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we touched on, pretty much how Salesforce can be transformative to the data hygiene that your organization collects and is, pretty much all around. We definitely want to let people know that, as Salesforce experts here, that we pretty much have an overview of as Coastal where we're taking in not just the software itself, but implementing and strategizing around how your organization best utilizes Salesforce and the data so that it does create a harmonious effect in the end. So again, I mentioned our True North Advisory and Strategic service, as well as our new waves for agentic AI, and how we continue to work around that AI implementation in your organization. We're covered across multiple industries, not just public sector, and of course, all the products that we can help implement to your organizations is pretty much how we do things here around at Coastal. And so, working, of course, across different partners like a FormAssembly, we're able to utilize different systems as well in order to best maximize the return on investment or return on data. So that your organization can be the best organization you can be, and of course provide your constituents with the best services possible. So everything from, as you're seeing here, from a Snowflake to the analytics and insights, the AI, the data modernization. It's all there. It's a full spectrum there so that you get the best impact that Salesforce was designed to give you. That's what we do here at Coastal.
Nice. I love that, Brian. We love working with Coastal. I'd love to share some information about FormAssembly as well. I think I have a couple of slides. I think I've stressed this, but data collection is something that organizations have been doing since the time of the clipboard. The census, I actually had a census job for a little while. The census been around, tried and true, but it doesn't mean that the public sector still needs to be operating off of clipboards. Sometimes they are the best way, but as Brian mentioned earlier, digital experiences are definitely taking precedent. It's definitely what modern audiences are expecting when they come to a digital property. And it just speeds things up. It allows organizations to run a little bit leaner. And I think that's been a theme with the government, in the last couple of years. So if you're looking to, at your organization, especially if you're in the public sector, become a little bit leaner, become a little bit more modern. If you have systems that are, I won't say in the dark ages, if you have systems that are in the 2010s and you need some help, FormAssembly is here. We are FedRAMP authorized. We do have a DoD IL4 environment available as well. We can allow you to move faster while also maintaining safety, security, and compliance. I mentioned we've got data collection looks different in every industry. We have tons of proven use cases in the public sector that we'd be happy to help with. And the big thing here that this slide tells me is if you are looking for a platform to consolidate so that you can get some control over the data coming into your systems, into your backend, so that you can start powering AI implementations with better information. FormAssembly is that secure data layer on the outside of your ecosystem, your tech stack. We can definitely help you with that data hygiene. I think you've got a couple resources that we'll send you the audience, Michael. We do have some information available that I think will be sent out via email. But of course, if you're interested in learning more about FormAssembly, formassembly.com is the best place to go.
Yes, that's correct. We'll be sending out an email with some resources along with the recording today and the slides of the presentation.